Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. We have schedules there, how to sign up, all those fun things. Our first hour is general discussion about things that generally affect us, media, virtual production. Second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. So today we're going to talk about my studio. We're using it as a way to talk about how we might design a studio and how we might, it's kind of an open discussion of brainstorming amongst ourselves to figure it out. It's not just mine, it's ours. So I just happen to be in it. So we're going to talk through that today. Tomorrow is still TBD. We had a change, so we're gonna work on that. Wednesday we've got John Barker is going to be here talking about the new features in here to record. So we're pretty excited to have John back. Office Hours 2.0 update will be on Thursday. We're going to talk about the future of co-working spaces on Friday. Saturday is the long day. We've got the education hours that happened. We don't put those on YouTube, and we have a special that we're doing this Saturday. Dennis has a video.
This year, the shortest Saturday of the year brings a long day with a difference.
Super Saturday!
The 18th of December will be a day of live broadcast from the Office Hours members around the world. The day starts at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time with an hour of live Q&A from Office Hours, immediately followed by the Education Hour, which is only available on Zoom. Then at 11 a.m., Shannon Cooper hosts the Office Hours Cooking Show, where she, Alex Lindsay, and Dennis Champion Walker cook along with Damayanti Gajar, making Mexican rice. At midday, Todd Reynolds brings us a live concert from his studio in North Adams, Massachusetts. Then at 1 p.m., we cross over to the Accidental Theatre in Belfast for an hour of entertainment using the Belfast method. Finally, at 2 p.m., we bring you a special edition of Conversations with Tony Mobley, featuring Todd Reynolds, Hazmat Gajar, and Richard Lavery. And that is your Super Saturday lineup here on Office Hours.
Good day, everyone. I am Liberty White, and we are going to jump into the questions. Bill?
Good morning, Liberty, and all around the world. The first one comes this morning from Mitchell Hill in Wilmington, Delaware. And Mitchell says, what's the best air purifier that's also quiet enough for a Zoom call?
Nigel?
Yeah, so I have two answers to that. First of all, it's really hard to find a really quiet one that's really good because automatically they turn themselves up when they smell something off. But I use a Conway 1512 in our living area. And if you put it on its lowest setting, it'll be pretty quiet. But if something unpleasant happens, it will motorize itself up and that will be too loud for you.
Thank you. Bill?
Moving on to the next question, Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas has it. Most mic booms are really restrictive. Is there a really good desktop mic stand that allows microphone flexibility and or mobility?
Okay, we'll start with David and then Mitchell and Alex.
I've become a big fan of the Wave LP, the Wave mic arm LP. It's the low profile mic arm. It's for $100. It's mounted right to my desk here. I can move it either way when I'm not using it. And it's just high enough that it doesn't intrude with my keyboard and mouse.
And Mitchell?
Yeah, I'm not into the old-fashioned mic stand that stands on with the weighted bottom and the little peg on the top of it, because it picks up a lot of the table noise and also your keyboard and things like that. The best way to go, and I apologize, my camera just switched over to the wrong aspect, but you can see that I'm using a boom which is attached to my tripod in the back. And that seems to work well because it keeps all this space free underneath it. And if you need to, you can swing it left or right. It's sort of like the Elgato, I think they call it the Wave thing that was just being shown. So I go for the boom with a mic, and I make sure you use a shock mount to keep the noise from getting into the microphone.
Mitchell, could you put the specs for that in the in Mukana or in Discord?
And Bill, and Paul, if you can, I know this, you haven't been here for a while, but if you can make sure to do it offline. Go ahead.
All right. And sorry, Mitchell, was there more to that?
No, got it covered. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Alex?
Yeah, I use the OC White Ultima. I've gone through about 5 or 6 of these. I would like to try the Elgato one just to see how much of a difference it is. But the OC White gives me the most dexterity I've had, and it's an underslung, which I find useful for what I do. I can see all my monitors.
All right, thanks, Bill.
I just wanted to note, if you absolutely have no alternative and you have to put a mic stand on your desk, a couple of pieces of mouse pad material, it's also the wetsuit material, stacked on your desk before you put the stand on will provide some isolation. Not as much as a good spring-loaded arm and particularly a mic mount that is suspended. But if you have to do it, make sure you have something soft under there. Never put a metal mic stand directly on a desktop because you will bang your desktop and infect your audio that way.
Yeah, that's a great point, Bill, because even the one that I had to switch out this morning, just making sure that the pad there, so it also doesn't move and make it rocky and shake. So, all right, Bill, next. Oh, sorry, I'm going to get Paul. Paul, go ahead.
Okay, apologize, Alex, for not following protocol. Just wanted to ask Mitchell if he could put the specs for that in Mukana or somewhere we could find it.
All right, next question, Bill.
Next one comes up from Paul Wallace, interestingly enough, in Austin, Texas. He says, how do you pump up or boost the audio on a USB microphone other than the Shure MV7, which has add-on software to do that, such as the Audio Technica ATR2100 or the ATR 2005 USB mics?
All right, Alex, and then Courtney.
It depends. Courtney will probably have a better solution on the PC. On the Mac, you would use something like Audio Hijack. Audio Hijack is going to let you go through it, and then you can process it there and move the volume up. But you need something, some kind of software there to bump it.
And Courtney?
Yeah, it's fairly complex on the PC, and I had a window up, but it suddenly disappeared. If you're on Windows, go to Settings, and then go to your Sound Settings. And you'll see your list for your microphones, and then go to Device Properties on your input, and there you will finally find the level adjustment for that particular USB microphone or device that you have plugged in.
And Paul?
Yeah, those are great suggestions for software. What about hardware? Is there anything you can put in line on a USB chain from the mic to the USB hub or to the computer that would boost the audio?
Alex?
Potentially, there might be a Raspberry Pi solution. I mean, that might be the only thing that you can do. But in general, the USB mics are designed to talk to the computer that they're working with. So you're going to have a pretty hard time managing those, and you'll end up spending almost as much money as you would for another mic in time and money.
All right, next question.
Moving on to Noah Sargent in Fullerton, California. And Noah asked, what LED wall brand would you recommend for a house of worship? Our current wall has a pitch of 3.9 and has bad moiré in camera. There's roughly 30 feet from the camera to the subject and another 15 feet between the subject and the LED wall.
Marty, and then Alex.
All right, so I think there may be a couple of different problems here. The first one is, and I'm not going to recommend any particular brands, but the pitch of the LEDs, which is the distance from one LED to the next, will determine the closest viewing distance. So the first row of pews or chairs to the video monitor at 3.9, or we'll call it 4 millimeter pitch, the closest somebody can be to the screen without being able to see the individual pixels would be about 18 feet. So if you have people sitting closer than that, you want to get a finer pitch screen. The Moiré might be a different problem between cameras and processing. The question would be, do you see that on other video screens?
Okay, Alex.
Yeah, so the Moiré that happens, I'm not going to talk about whether people see it or not. I don't really think about the people in the room. But from a camera perspective, as we look at Moiré, this is something we deal with LED walls all the time. They're kind of our nemesis. We finally started to find LED walls that can manage this. This is a relationship to depth of field. So what happens is as that depth of field starts to become shorter and shorter, you can blur out the areas there. There's an obvious problem, which is Moiré. There's a subtle problem, which is compression. So if you're actually using these cameras to stream, if there is any texture in that LED, even if it's blurred and a texture there, it defeats your temporal compression and reduces the quality of your stream. So it is technically a disaster to use LED walls behind people unless you can get it all the way down to being completely blurred out. Now that's a function of your sensor size. So if you know, a lot of times we move very quickly. Now I will only use Super 35 sensors under 75 feet. So I keep it always at Super 35, and partially because that creates a shorter depth of field. I think it makes the set look bigger. It also blurs out that wall. By zooming in, you're going to shorten that depth of field again. So that's going to give you another area. Having enough distance behind the person, of course, depth of field falls off and that background will fall out. And then, of course, reducing that pitch. We would not put an LED wall by choice behind a person with higher than 2 millimeter pitch. And most of the ones that we use are 0.9. There's an issue where if you want to curve the wall, you might have to go up to 2.7 to 3.2. The problem with that is that the curve makes the moiré super complicated. So what happens is you'll notice that the moiré will only happen at certain focal points. So it's just certain places where the focus hits. And so the other thing you can do is we literally check off like don't use these focus points, and it means you cut a little slower so you get through the moiré. You never zoom in. You never do a slow push if you have an LED wall because you're going to go in and out of those moiré points. So you need to make sure that you are going to be cutting around that and then zooming in and checking for the moiré before you actually cut to it. But in general, you know, if you can build without them, they're great. I mean, I know that people were excited about them, but now that we've moved online, they are expensive to do well.
All right, Nigel.
Yes, not as good an answer as that, maybe slightly frivolous, but I have put in Makana a link to a company called Seed. So if you'd like to go to completely the wrong end of the scale and spend $1 million on a 165-inch monitor, that's really the best example.
Yes, all right. And then we have Noah.
Yeah, just following up with great notes. Thanks, everybody. Specifically around the Moiré effect, Alex, do you know, obviously the lower the pitch, my hypothesis is the less you'll have, but it's still going to be there. Is that the deal?
You can get to a point where it has it's the moiré will go away. So it has to do with how far back the screen is and how dense the pitch is. So you can get to 15 feet, but at 15 feet, we would generally, with a sensor that's a 2/3 inch sensor or smaller, we would say that you need at 3.9, you would need like 30 feet behind the person to have any chance of having this work without the moiré. So if you want to pull it up, 0.9 to 1.7 is usually where we try to live inside of to get those in. But those screens are expensive and they're hard to fix and they are delicate and they take a huge amount of processing because there's a lot more pixels. So those are a whole bunch of challenges with it. It does, what I will say, especially in HDR, they look amazing. Like at 0.9 behind a person, it is stunningly cool. But the moiré stuff the moiré issues make it so difficult. We try to avoid it.
Courtney?
And I don't know if it was mentioned yet, but field size makes a big difference. So if you're zoomed in on a person in front of a screen and the screen is close enough to them to be in focus, then you're going to still see moiré even at a high pitch rate. So if your camera is closer on a wider angle screen, so you'll see more of the screen in your field, then you'll have less chance of moiré. And it changes as you zoom. The ratio changes and the moiré will change as you change your field size on the camera.
Okay, next question.
Comes to us from Tobias Moss in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And Tobias says, to improve the image of our sanctuary, Panasonic 4K 30 pan tilt zoom cams, which settings would you play with first on the camera controller?
Alex?
White balance and color. So those are the two that you wanted. White balance is the rough thing to do, and then color to fine tune it.
Roscoe?
I couldn't figure out exactly what camera you're using because Panasonic doesn't make a 30x 4K, but I put in the list of the things to do. Assuming you have a UAE 150, there are some, kind of what Alex said, the settings are not the traditional CCU look with the color wheels and that kind of stuff. They get into some more Panasonic specific type settings, but yeah, certainly setting just go through them, settings, and try. They'll give you like 3 choices and you'll see which one looks best in your sanctuary.
And Tobias?
Yeah, I was seeing in the camera control lots of DRS, DTL, DNR, chroma, gain, shutter, all these more fine settings that I wasn't sure which ones to play with or which ones to leave alone. And also which settings could be globally set and which would be specific to like any given frame I'm choosing with those cameras.
Alex?
In general, you want to have it be a global setting. You don't want to be changing things per frame. So you want to try to get all your cameras into the same place. Otherwise, you're going to start chasing a fast moving circle. So what you want to do is think about, and I would recommend getting some kind of color chart. Now, the least expensive ones are like X-Rite charts. If you're going to match a couple of these cameras together, you need a single version of the truth. If you try to do it, what the best way to do this is to get those cameras next to each other in the sanctuary, in the lighting that you're going to use, and drop a chart in front of them that you can zoom in on, and then you can figure out whether those colors are exactly the same. There's probably a whole second hour that we could do about, how I think we might have done it already, about how to match those charts up. But the main thing is you want to line those charts up, and you can literally take one video out of each one of them to get a sense of it. In general, you want to get to a point where you can color each one of those, and then you're going to start. I don't know whether I think the Panasonics have like the R minus B and B minus R and G minus B, and these are all things that you can use to pull in a vector scope with the proper charts. But some kind of chart, a gray. Some people will use white, like a white card. Some people will use a gray card. You can white balance it. You can just do auto white balance, and that's going to get them kind of close. But to get the color right, you need a color chart. And then you need to make sure that those color charts are looking exactly the same. And then most importantly, you have a person sitting there in the sanctuary. You make sure the skin looks the same between all the cameras. People will forgive almost everything else in the shot as long as their skin matches between shots. You were going to say, Tobias?
Yeah, just in terms of the room is pretty bright, but should be brighter for cameras, So in terms of making the brightness best, is that a gain thing or is that something else?
Typically, you're going to open your aperture as far as you possibly can, and then you gain up. So at that point, get it, take it up as much. Now the problem is, as you open it up, of course, you're going to shorten that depth of field. It makes it harder for it to focus. But I would recommend doing that because it looks nicer. And then what you need to do, then you'll start to try to gain up. You just want to gain up as delicately as you can. But essentially, what you want is the whites on a person, not lights, but the natural whites should be hitting about 90%. And then your blacks, what you think are really black should be hitting about 5 or 10%. And in that, so that's a full dynamic range image that you're trying to get to, within that camera. And so you start with the aperture and then move to the gain.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll go to Roscoe.
Yeah, so just so going through these, they don't have traditional controls, which was I was surprised for such a high-end camera, Panasonic not having the traditional controls. They just give you menu settings. So hit me up in after hours, and I'd be happy to kind of walk you through since I've done it a few times with art.
And it might be a good idea too, if you've got any footage of where you are already, to possibly put that in Mukana if you can, and or in Discord, so that you can just get the support of the community as we see in more detail of what you're referring to. Great question. And go back to Alex.
The last thing I'll say is after hours is open 21 hours a day. To follow up on Roscoe, you can come in with those cameras into after hours and we'll look at them and give you feedback. so if we could make it a group session, if you tell us when, and we'll take a look at them and help tune them as well. It's a learning opportunity for all of us to talk about that specific camera, how to color it, what to look at. So if we can figure out a way that we can see the interface that you're working with and we can see the output of the camera, it's a great learning experience for everybody.
All right, next question.
Tobias Moss came back right immediately with another one, and this time he's saying, I have 2 nanlight pavotubes. Thank Alex and Office Hours for the recommendations. And now I'm wondering what other colored lights would be useful and fun for home music video recordings, office hour style videos, parties, tricks, and so forth.
Alex?
Yeah, I like the one here. I'm not using them right now, but when I go to hotel rooms, I use them. And setting them to a color, a blue or a green color or whatever, helps you light your backgrounds for Zoom calls. So that's one way to use them.
And Bill?
The only thing I wanted to note is I'm doing a little bit of that in the office right now. And if you are using the less expensive, and sometimes less expensive ones put out a lot of light, they're fun to use, and you're talking about not a high-level professional use, just be wary, because if you're videotaping anything there or have a camera in the room and you dim these lights, they tend to exhibit flicker in a really bad rate. So what I've come to do is I have a lot of neutral density gel around, and I never dim any of my colored lights unless they're the high-end ones who are set for that. Instead, I turn them up all the way to reduce the flicker and then add neutral density gel as needed to get the light level down.
Paul?
I think Newer, is that how you say it? Does anyone know how to say that? Newer, something.
Yeah,
something were. They have they have some lights that are paired with stands that are colored. I don't have the model number, but if I find it, I'll post it in Makana. And that's a lower cost alternative.
Alex?
As I think he already has the pavotubes. I think specifically to this question, I don't think you can have that flickering problem, because I don't believe they flicker when we turn them down. So they have a higher rate of return. So I don't think you'll have any issues there. All right.
All right, next question.
Moving on to Paul Wallace, and Paul says, hang on a second, there we go. Paul says, a lot of panelists are using mix pre's. Please raise your hands. What are the advantages or drawbacks of the 3 versus the 6 versus the F6, which records 6 inputs and a stereo mix?
Yeah, we just have a few. All right, Courtney.
I have one. It's right here, but I'm not using it. And I also have an F6, and I'm not using that either. So the differences are price, considerably. Difference for the 6. I mean, they're about the same for a Mix Pre 3 without noise assist and an F6. So it's 3 inputs to 6 inputs, and if you're not using all 6 inputs, I'd say the Mix Pre has much better preamps on the microphone inputs, especially if you're going to be using it with a dynamic mic, which requires a little more gain in your system. Noise assist is available on the Mix Pre at an additional cost. That's a plugin that costs money. And there is Auto Mix available on both, and it's free and included on the F6. The F6 also is a recorder, also supports timecode. It supports all of those things built in. It's compact. I think it's easier to access the menus on the F6, and the F6 also has a pretty good app that runs on iOS that you can put on an iPad or an iPhone and control the levels and all the other inputs, all the other input controls and commands from the app, which is very handy to use. Also, the F6 sips power compared to the sound devices, 3 or the 6. 3 or the 6, the power handling, it's fairly voracious in its consummation of batteries, and to plug it into USB, if you're using Type A USB and not Type C, it requires 2 USB-A inputs to power the unit off of USB power. So that's a consideration you have to have. If you don't have USB-C available, you have to use 2 of your USB-A ports to keep it powered continuously. And the Zoom F6 has much better battery switching. It has 3 sources of power, and it switches seamlessly between all 3 of them. And the batteries seem to work much longer in the F6. That's my take on the 3.
Thank you, Courtney. Alex?
Mix Pre 3 is almost impossible to get right now. Mix Pre 3 2 is almost impossible to get right now. So the Mix Pre 3 may be all you can choose there. It is the preamps on the Mix. I've tested both of them. The preamps on the Mix Pre and the Mix Pre 6, Mix Pre 3 and Mix Pre 6 are dramatically better than the Zoom ones. Not like marginally, but dramatically. And if you add noise assist to it, it's not even close. So if you have the money to put it in, if you have the money to do a Mix Pre, it is significantly better than the Zoom. But the Zoom is a solid piece of hardware. It's just the Mix Pre is at an entirely different level.
Paul?
Yeah, what I heard from Courtney, who gave an extraordinary rundown, was that the F6, it sounds like the hands down winner. Is there any reason not to get an F6?
Yeah, a concern of quality. a concern of quality of your audio is the reason that you don't get the F6. You know, like if you care, if it's all about money, then get the F6. If it's all about absolute quality of your audio, then the answer is the mixed pre's. So it just depends on what you want. So mixed pre's are for folks that can't afford the 8 series, you know, sound devices, but still want those preamps and still want the noise assist. I can't even in my office, I cannot use a preamp without noise assist. I've got fans and all kinds of other stuff going on and everything else. And so I couldn't use an F6, you know, for it. And I wouldn't ever use it in the field, ever. Like, you know, based on my experience with the Zoom recorders in the past. So.
All right. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Daniel McFarland, and Daniel says, recommendations for an iPad Mac app I can use to draw floor plans.
Jason?
This is one of these things where you end up, if you're me, you end up playing around with just about everything on the market, spending entirely too much money, and then settling back right where you started. I really like Magic Plan for a lot of reasons. It will allow you to export to Sketch. It'll give you a really nice looking PDF that you can overlay a company logo onto. And of course, the most compelling thing is that it will output the floor plan when you're finished to OBJ or USDZ.
Alex?
Yeah, you can OmniGraph will also, just for basic 2D graphics, runs on an iPad. I will admit that I have not found that I can draw very fast on an iPad. So I think that you just really want to, if you can't find something that's really fluid, it's going to be harder. And Jason, you found that you could draw that relatively quickly, as fast as you could on a desktop.
I think I can draw it really quickly. The other nice thing about Magic Plan is if you don't want to get the proportions exactly right, if you have a Bluetooth based laser finder, I have one from Bausch that'll just connect into the iOS device. It'll give you the precise measurement. So it goes, how far is that wall? And you go, oh, hang on, let me show you. And it goes, thanks for those measurements. And that's it.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Jack B. in Phoenix, Arizona. Wait a second. No, I think I'm in the wrong place. Let's try Roger Mills in Lake Zurich, Illinois. And he says, could Keynote be used by a novice user on an iPad with Zoom to provide a local switch of the camera, video, text, and images, avoiding the use of screen sharing?
Roscoe?
Not that I would think of. Keynote really isn't a interface for doing any kind of control of other devices, but there are other things. First thing that comes to mind is I think it's the companion web app, which mimics a Stream Deck. So you could do something like that and then program it to do that type of control, possibly.
Alex?
Yeah, so you could do it with the new Keynote, with the newest version of Keynote that has video, and we've tested it where you could set up keystrokes that would jump to certain slides, which would be different angles, and you can have super sources and lower thirds. The part that I don't think would line up with that is that I don't think that would be for a novice. that is about as complex a Keynote file that you can build. So it can do it at this point with the video sources, but I think that it would be an interesting lift to do that.
Lois?
I'm actually wondering how in the world would you get the Keynote out to Zoom if you aren't sharing the screen?
Well, you'd have to still, I just jumped in, but you would have to still have something that's going to get it out. The biggest problem with Keynote right now is that it doesn't have a siphon in or siphon out. So you can capture the screen, but you could also send it out, into something like a switcher or some kind of very inexpensive HDMI to USB-C kind of converter.
And Roscoe?
Roger, I just want to point out that what's going on right now are some labs that are about building interfaces for people to do control over sophisticated machinery with a simple interface from Isadora. So something you just may want to be aware of or follow along because it may meet your needs in a much more straight ahead way.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Mitchell Hill. Oops, again. And in this case, he says, can Alex tell us more about using a Studio Technologies mic mute? Is it available for analog connections?
There are... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I thought I was in there. Sorry. Go ahead, Bill. You want to start?
Oh, no, actually, you use these a lot. And Alex, as we all know, plays exceptionally hard. These are fabulous consoles designed for the broadcast industry that do everything, and he'll tell you all about them. I use a simpler thing because I didn't want to spend that level, so I use the little Rolls 111 mic mute. These are about $80. It's a company up in, I think it's either Colorado or Utah, and they've been very responsive and very good. So if you can't spend at Alex levels, this is a great alternative. If you can spend it at an Alex level, he'll talk you through the Cadillac of the units that are fabulous.
And Alex?
Yeah, so I've used a lot of these for a while, and I was trying to get I realized I had pulled all my converters for my phone so I could do a handheld for the cooking thing. So anyway, so I can't show it to you, but what I have is a Studio Technologies Model 205. There are lots of models. There's, and some of them are analog, some of them are, mine happens to be Dante. So mine is a Dante interface, and basically what it allows me to do is the mic goes into it, but then it, as a Dante interface, can interface with my mixer or my, but it also has an analog out. So if I wanted to do analog through this piece of hardware, it will allow me to do that as it is. I also have 2 talkbacks built into it, so I can have Dante coming to this switcher, and see that I disappeared there. If I push down to do a talkback, it'll automatically turn my mic off. So for me, if I'm in a show and things are going to be picking up speed here as we start using Unity for panelists, is that I want to talk to somebody and I want to push down and talk to everybody or whatever, I can push that down and know that my mic isn't going out to the show. So those are all kinds of things that I can actually, make work more effectively. So anyway, so that's this is the smallest version. It just happens to fit on my desk, but they make large versions and medium-sized versions. They have many different, these are a variety of the different announcer consoles that Studio Technology makes, and they've been making them for decades, and they are the best. So when it comes down to making those work, but it is expensive. I think the one I bought is like $800. It's not a $50 or $100 thing, but when I use it all day, every day. So for me, it's worth spending the money because it works well.
And then Mitchell?
Yeah, it's back to Alex on this one. Can you use analog now in Dante when we have Unity, or if we have something like Unity for backtop?
Yeah, so you can use the it has an analog in and out that I can use immediately, and then I can use Dante as needed. I just don't.
205?
The 205, yeah, but it's Dante. It's analog only for your mic. The talkbacks have to come in and out of Dante. There are other larger versions of this where the talkbacks can come in over analog as well.
Next question.
Next time we go to Tobias Moss in Minneapolis. For someone completely tech illiterate, what's the most fail-proof mute, unmute physical button I could set up for them?
Jason?
Well, that's going to depend on whether it's a Mac or a PC, but I'm going to speak more generally about that. Any key that is not used in Zoom or generally by your operating system toward, in the course and scope of normal use can be set as a global mute or unmute. So I use the F19 on, your standard large Mac keyboard because, it's not mapped to anything, at least not in Mac OS. So if you do that and you set it to global, you can, oh yeah, see, there I am. I'm gone and here and gone. And it works whether or not Zoom is in the foreground if you check that cool little global button.
Nigel?
That answer.
Marty?
I would ask simple for them or simple for you. So simple for them would be like the Rolls MM11, which is a little box. You plug the microphone through it. It's got a big button at the top, and you push it, it's muted. You push it again, and it unmutes. Simple. That's simple for them and simple for you. Another way to do it is to arrange for a remote control button that actually mutes it within the computer or within your audio interface or wherever the microphone is plugged into.
Paul?
Okay, just as I came on, my condo PA system came on in the background. There's nothing I can do about it. But I would say Stream Deck, just because it'll have a mute button, but then it opens the door to so many other possibilities for that. And correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's a good option so that they can scale. And we'll go to Lois.
Okay, so on my microphone, I have a button. You push it, it turns it off. You push it, it turns it on. So if you only have one mic for the user, that's a real simple way.
Next question.
Comes to us from Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. Sorry about that. He says, does anyone have issues with Filmic Remote? Not working today, cannot make any adjustments to my iPhone camera.
Tony?
Yeah, this is very different. It may be an ATEM issue. I have turned it off and turned it back on. I've done everything that I can do short of restarting the iPhone, but it is working, so you can see me. But I'll show you what I normally get. And so that's my iPad. That's the Filmic Remote. And that's what I get. But it is working because you can see me on screen. I just can't make any adjustments to it in terms of changing the color or zooming in, focus, coloring. Just can't do anything with it.
Jeffrey, you want to take a shot at that?
Yeah, actually, I was using Filmic Remote today. I'm switching around my ATEMs. I was using my production switcher, and which doesn't do GoPros, so I had to figure out another way to do cameras. So I was using an older version of my older iPhone to do Filmic Remote. I have not seen the App Store with any updates, so I'm pretty sure I'm on the current version, and I was having absolutely no problems using the remote to get the camera going.
Okay, next question.
George Butters is up next in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and he says, is there any point in acquiring an ATEM switcher without ISO recording capabilities?
We may have lost Liberty.
Whoops, did we?
Courtney, sorry,
Oh,
that was
thank you.
me.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I have an ATEM switcher without ISO recording, and unless you're producing something that you're going to edit later and upload somewhere and to be the show provider, if you're participating in a Zoom conference like this and just using it for switching, no, you don't need the ISO recording because it's live and you don't need to record the output for editing later. So if you don't need to ever edit what you're recording, if you're live switching, and that's usually why you have a live switcher like the ATEM, is because you're switching live. Otherwise, you could edit together single camera shots in an editing package later. So if you're not producing it and cleaning it up for transmission later, no need to have ISO at all.
Jason?
How quickly things speed up. I will remind everyone that there's, in its purest form, a switcher doesn't have ISO recording. For all of the time that I spent learning how to actually use switchers like this, none of these have ISO recording that requires its own deck, one off on one. So the answer is, yeah, there are many purposes. If you have an extra one, then an easy thing to do, assuming you're not trying to pass HDCP, is simply connect it to an external monitor and get rid of a superfluous monitor. Start switching between A, B, C, and D if you've got only four for your computers.
Jeffrey?
The first thing would be for modularization, just as Jason was talking about. So I would bring it into my computer, and then I'd use Software Switcher to actually do a little bit more, like bring in graphics or anything like that. And then I could have the 4 cameras to switch through on there. I could actually use my Stream Deck as well to put all the buttons on, so I can actually have it completely seamless from there. The other thing is it does have the Ethernet, and that can connect to a streaming bridge to somebody else's system. So if you're a guest on another thing, or maybe in a classroom or something like that, that goes to a master switcher of some sort, then things like that, that would work perfectly for a non-ISO style device.
Bill?
Jeffrey handled it. I'm sorry. No, it was Courtney handled it. Go on.
Okay. Noah.
Better to have it and not use it than not have it and want it.
Next question.
Next question is from Hasmik, our friend in Cape Town, South Africa. Hasmik Ajar says, leveling prompter and camera. Spirit level of the tripod is perfect as a setup for a 24-inch prompter people prompter. 6K on the prompter. The talent view through the 6K LCD shows tiles in the kitchen as being not horizontal. Fixing that renders the prompter sloping horizontally. A fix?
Courtney?
Well, I'm having a little bit of trouble understanding the problem, but what it could be is that when you have a mirror reflecting a monitor, the relationship of the bottom of the monitor to the mirror controls the angle of the levelness of the image in the reflection. So if the monitor is not perfectly perpendicular or parallel, if the bottom of the monitor is not perfectly parallel with the bottom of the mirror, if it's angled slightly, the image in the reflection will be going downhill one side or the other, depending upon which side it's rotated. So that could be the problem that's causing your image reflection to be not parallel to the talent that's looking at it. If I'm interpreting the question correctly.
Alex?
In a more general sense, the problem with the Spirit is that the little bubble that you have there is going to tell you where it is as it affects as it latches into the tripod, but it doesn't tell you everything above it. So there can be lots of little things that are a little off here and there. The camera can be slightly tilted. Things can be not just perfectly flush. So while you want to use that level to get you, that's the fastest way to get you there. In the end, it has to look good visually. So a lot of times we'll look at something, also if you're at a slight angle or something, and we'll fix it visually. We'll just literally loosen that ball and just move it until everything looks flat across the top. And usually we find that it's usually a minor thing. And if we just adjust it, it fixes all the OCD problems that we have otherwise.
Jason?
Yeah, I had to deal with this a little bit myself. So, I mean, anytime, again, if it's not perfectly parallel, as you can see, this is slightly at an angle. It may or may not show through on Zoom, but the monitor moves left and right. And again, if it's not absolutely perfect, then yeah, it's not going to look right to your eye. The other thing that I would remind you of is that all cameras have lens distortion if you're talking about the tiles when you're actually looking through the camera. And, of course, kerning can always mess with this a little bit too.
And Bill?
Just to add one more bit of insult to the injury, in the real world, if you move a camera anywhere off of 90 degrees perpendicular to the subject, you're going to get vanishing points start to happen. So lines will start to converge. They will not be right. So often, as Alex said, optically right is more important than geometrically right with a spirit level.
Next question.
Next question comes up from Tobias Moss in Minneapolis, and he says, when you have to do a 2-up Zoom, it drops the resolution of each in the Zoom meeting. But a live stream out of Zoom seems to keep the better resolution. Is this the case in all Zoom meetings or settings? I wish Zoom kept the better resolution in the meeting.
Go ahead, Tobias.
Yeah, so a lot of our congregation or audience are in the Zoom meeting, and some are seeing this live stream on Facebook or whatnot. And when you do 2 spotlights at once, it drops the resolution to 360 or something terrible. But when you look at it on Facebook, it still seems 720 or 1080 on each.
Roscoe?
Well, we've learned that you can request from Zoom to upgrade you to a 1080p meeting. And so what you do is you ask the support to give you high quality all the time coming out. Zoom only pulls the resources it needs. So if you're like, when we're in the grid, it may only want to pull 360 from my camera. This show pulls 1080p all the time, but so you can ask Zoom for a little bit of help there. The other thing we've talked about, and it may help in your case, is if you buy a $80 Facebook portal and add it to your meeting, then it will bump it up to 720p at least and give you that higher quality, hopefully all the way.
That was a good reminder, Roscoe. Marty?
So Zoom is very bandwidth dependent. So you're seeing the 2-up go down in resolution as you're receiving it. That could be a reflection of the available bandwidth either in your network or in your internet connection. But when Zoom is sending out to Facebook, that's going from the servers. And so your receive internet connection won't affect that. So that may account for that. You can ask, just to follow up on what Roscoe was saying, you can request 720. 1080 is a bit of a different animal that takes a lot more coercing to get it.
All right, next question.
George Butters in Halifax, Nova Scotia is up next, and he says, any tips on dealing with clients who simply don't believe they look and sound awful? Hissy sound, intermittent freezing, eyeline in the lower third, and the 1980s pixelization. Can they be saved, or is it better to just move on?
Tobias?
Thanks. I think others will talk to how to give examples or whatnot, but just some emotional intelligence of, can I humor them? Can I charm them? Just kind of playing to the personality of the person you have to convince is pretty important.
Mitchell?
Yeah, my number one objective when I meet with a client before I roll the tape and start recording them is to tell them and look them right in the eye and tell them my job is to make you look as best as you can as you represent your brand. And you must put yourself in my hands when I do that. And that includes you telling them that don't look away from the camera at the finish of the take. There's a problem with your microphone, lighting. I'm assuming this is a Zoom call, so it's important to get through all these issues. I would love to create a short video that explains to them easy things that they can do to enhance their Zoom call. It's just simply things like the microphone is wrong, or you need to move it here, or you need to have this switch set correctly in Zoom, or you need to have better lighting. But all of those things relate to addressing specifically that issue of hissy sound or bad video. They must trust you, and you need to create that trust.
David?
Show up and look professional yourself, and they will see that.
Alex?
I will tell you the most effective way to do this. It's also the most painful way to do it for them. So you have to be very careful about how you do this. You get them into a show with their peers, and you have at least one of those peers that you have total control over, and you make them look like dynamite. So, and then they will go back and look at that video, and it is very embarrassing for an executive to see what they look like compared to another executive. Compared to you, when you're talking to them on a one-to-one thing, they don't grok how much different they look than you. I mean, sometimes they do. When they're on a show that went out to the public and they see what they looked like compared to somebody else in their field, it causes, panic attacks. Like, it is a huge issue for people to see themselves next to their peers, and their peers look great and they look horrible. And what we do is we warn them, everybody's getting these kits, that we sent out, or we're setting everybody up, and we don't want you to look bad. Like we just, this is the old, I got a guy in the other cell, and if he has a different story than you do, that's exactly what we're doing, is good cop, bad cop, but we're just warning them that everyone else is going to look good because they're listening to what we're doing. And even if no one's listening to us, so anyway, and then we use that to kind of try to move that around. But the biggest thing is if one or two people bite, and but every time someone lets you play hard, like just get everything just right, because they'll push everybody else forward.
Yes. All right. Next question.
Next one comes from Eduardo Augustine in Panama, Florida. And Eduardo said, probably in Panama and Central America. How do you track the timestamps and insert them into YouTube for time skipping?
David?
I'm going to let Jeffrey talk about the tracking, because he I think does that for office hours. But as far as getting those time skips over on YouTube, you literally just put it into the description. The most important thing to remember is that your first line, not the first line of the whole description, but your first line of this list has to be 00:00. Even if you just put welcome or intro, and then anything you put after that will automatically happen in Zoom. In YouTube.
Jeffrey?
So to do office hours, Chris Peterson's done a great job with Mukana, so I don't have to worry about it too much. I just basically have to run a command, and then I get all the timestamps, which I can then insert into YouTube. However, there is an old school way to do it, and that was the way I was doing it before that, and that is use a timer and use a spreadsheet program. I do have a specific spreadsheet program that every time I entered in what the next question was, it would actually do a timestamp from there. And then what I would do at that point was I would copy that whole thing and then put it right into YouTube. There's no automatic way there, even though YouTube is testing a automatic timestamp option in there. I have yet to see it actually work, so I'm not sure how that's gonna change anything from there. The other thing, to what David Paskin was saying, the most important thing is you got to keep everything in order, because there's been a couple times where numbers would creep in, and then all of a sudden I'd get this warning saying, "Hey, your timestamps are out of order," and you just have to fix that.
Next question.
Next one comes from Dennis Champion Walker here in the panel, and Dennis says a family member will be away over Christmas, and we want to set up a webcam on a Raspberry Pi to notify us of any movement in the building. Does the panel have any recommendations for this application?
Start with Courtney.
Well, not for a Raspberry Pi, unless you already have the Raspberry Pi. I'd recommend something like this, the Wisecam V3. It's about $35, $36. It has motion detection. You can tie into it from their app from anywhere in the world, as long as there's Wi-Fi available in the building. It has color, night vision, and audio and everything else, so that you can monitor any activity in the area. And like I say, $35. It's hard to beat that. With a Raspberry Pi and a webcam would cost you more than that.
Right. All right. Jeffrey?
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing. A webcam would be your first and best option, but secondary, if you really want to dive into this, I wouldn't do a Raspberry Pi. I'd do an NVIDIA Jetson Mini, because it comes with software that gives you all the places where you can go to actually experiment with that. Set up an AI system. You can use a regular webcam like a C920 or something like that, and then you can then program it so it will do detection of movement, facial detection, and anything like that. So they have a very great set of programs that you, once again, you can test it out and have some fun with it.
Next question.
Todd Reynolds in North Adams, Massachusetts, and a friend of ours is up next. He says, working with a client who seeks an effort-free solution for a Zoom background. The lastolite is proving too heavy and too cumbersome. Are there quality solutions that are ceiling hangable and retractable like a projection screen?
Alex?
You can actually use a projection screen. So if you look at daylight motorized, and what you're looking for is gray screens, not white screens. And then that gray screen can come down. It's motorized. You hit a button and it just comes down and goes back up again. I'm going to actually probably get one to test for my office. I like this gray screen and I can pop it up. But as I build in Office Hours 2.0, I've been thinking about the idea of having one that just rolled down to see if that works. So we may test that in the future.
Roscoe?
Exactly what Alex said, and go to your local photography store. They probably have some backdrop solutions that would be also either roll up or just self-standing that might work for this.
Okay, next question.
Greg Grichmeyer in Topping, Virginia is up next. He says, looking for suggestions and recommendations. Early stages of planning a weekly high school baseball streaming show. Thinking 3 cameras, 1 fixed and 2 controllable. High school operators will be involved, and boom mics for this.
Roscoe?
Well, first of all, PTZs won't be able to keep up, so hopefully you will have live people on those cameras. You want one over the right shoulder, look right at the backstop, looking over the right shoulder of the catcher into the strike zone. You want one to the right side of the visitor's dugout down the first baseline, looking at all the plays that come across first base. And then you're going to want one high up that can oversee the whole field. Sometimes you can get away with a wide angle lens right behind the backstop, or if you go up high, you want that wide angle lens that you can see the entire field. I used to be the baseball volunteer guy for Cal State Fullerton.
That's really thorough, Alex.
What Roscoe said.
All right, next question.
Nailed it. Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia comes up next. He says, I'm getting these for our Zoom worship leaders for the House of Worship, OpenCon bone conduction stereo Bluetooth headsets. Panel thoughts?
Laura?
You don't have to go wireless. I would not use Bluetooth.
And Jeffrey?
I'm wearing them right now. So I got the OpenCom. I got this one, which actually has the microphone down here. And of course, I'm not using the microphone for that. I like it. It's Bluetooth 5. And the one thing I like about it is that, there's going to be a little bit of latency, but I can walk around the house without too much issue. And with that said, there's going to be some times where Bluetooth just interrupts. If it's not needed for absolute production, then those are going to be perfect for that.
All right, next question.
Comes again from Tony, and Tony this time says, I need help for the house of worship that needs copyright-free music for Zoom services wanting to move to YouTube.
Alex?
One of the ones to look at is epidemic. I'm sorry. I keep on wanting to say because I feel like they shouldn't call it that, but epidemic sound. So epidemic sound is out of Sweden, where all pop music is created. But what they do is you can actually license stems or whole music tracks. And when you sign up with them, you put in your YouTube channel. So it has to be the church that you're working with. Signs up, this is our YouTube channel. And what they've done is they've cleared all the rights. So they basically will clear list your channel to play their music. And you don't have to subscribe to them forever. You just have to be subscribed when you downloaded that music to do it. So, but I would stay subscribed, and then you can change the music all the time. The music's pretty good. And again, because you have access to the stems, you can make the drums a little less or make this a little bit more. It doesn't give you every instrument, but it does kind of give you some stuff to play with. We've used it recently for some shows if I don't have the money for a composer, those types of things, this is the best one that I've seen so far.
Okay, next question.
Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana says, is anyone going to the realtimeconference.com? And he has the link there for it.
Thank you. Anyone?
I'm sorry, I should have raised my hand there. I'm going to try to drop in and watch a little bit of it if I can. It does look like there's some pretty interesting possibilities there.
Roscoe?
And it's free.
Right. In real
thank
time.
you. Thanks for sharing the link. So now we can attend. Next question.
Jasmine Lee in Singapore says, has anyone used Citrix Workspace on an M1 MacBook Pro 13-inch? Any tips and red flags to look out for? And thank you.
Jason.
Yes, I have. And yes, there are. The admin, the person in charge of the workspace, not the thing connecting to the workspace, absolutely needs to be running the most current version of Citrix OS. If you're not, then you're going to have problems. You may very well have problems anyway. It's a little bit of a tricky thing because Citrix is based on Java, and M1 plays with Java like cats and dogs.
Next question.
Jack B. in Phoenix, Arizona says he's looking for a boom mic that needs to for use with recording with an iPhone 13 Pro Max with a small rig cage.
Marty?
So I'm assuming that you're looking for something like a short shotgun microphone, whereas a boom is something that you would actually hold, right? So look at Rode.com and look at Saramonic USA, and I've put those into Makana.
Alex?
And specifically, the Rode one is great, by the way. I've used that, and it's a short shotgun. It's not going to go very far, at least the one that's designed to go straight into the iPhone. The other place, the Saramonic, which is also what Marty had mentioned, you can get an interface with an XLR, then you can use anything for a boom. So you can, they have interfaces to one or two channels of XLR going into the Lightning device. And so that's a great solution as well.
All right, next question.
George Butters in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Oops, is back with, that's the wrong, oh, darn. George Butters says, when is it prudent to unplug gear before making those minor adjustments in our kit that can quickly become hazardous?
Roscoe?
Most modern gear is designed to fail safe, fail to neutral, or fail to ground. So you really don't want to unplug it. You may want to power it down. And I usually use the snap, crackle, pop routine, which is it's going to, do any of those three things, then definitely shut it down before you unplug or make adjustments.
Courtney?
Yeah, if you're unplugging it, it's not a minor adjustment. So I would leave everything plugged in, otherwise you won't know what you're adjusting. No, it's not necessary to unplug for minor adjustments. The difference of that is if you're unplugging or plugging in or unplugging a condenser microphone into an open mic channel, yes, I would take that mic channel down in level, but I would not power it off or unplug it.
Next question.
Liberty White. Whoa, it's you. In Atlanta, Georgia, says, this morning my audio Rode mic into the ATEM wasn't working. Is there a preferred mic to go directly into the ATEM Mini Pro?
And I just wanted to add a little context. So yes, I normally don't go directly in, and I use an extension cord. So first, I think it was Jason who made a comment about it needing power. And I had the power on, but it still wasn't reading it. And I've got to do some updates on the ATEM. So we'll see next time I go around. And then I had now the Shure SMB 48, and that I had an extension cord to get it into the ATEM. And that's when Alex came on and there was just all this sound. So I got rid of the extension and plugged it directly into the ATEM, and voila. But I am curious as to the panel of when you go directly, so not using an interface to then go into the ATEM. Mitchell.
Hi. I'm going to ask that you try a different procedure to do exactly the same thing. Let's try to avoid plugging directly into the ATEM because it's not a great preamp in there and it's a bit noisy. If you plug into a camera that is plugged into the ATEM, you got a better preamp probably, and it's going to be in sync with your picture. So it's not so much the mic choice. It's in this case, it's where you choose to use the preamp.
Jeffrey.
So yeah, I try to avoid the mic inputs at pretty much all costs. And if I do go through the mic preamps, what I end up doing is I go through a mixer. That way it can control some of the sound from there. I have some a semblance to make some changes, but for the most part, a lot of times when I use the ATEM Pro, I'm always using an external source because everything is going to the computer anyway. I might as well just use the computer audio going in there, and that can control that a little bit better. Because once again, you don't know what's going to happen, especially if those cameras, those microphones come on, then all of a sudden you're messing with a whole bunch of channels that just get in the way.
Thank you all. Next question.
And the last one on the regular crew is from Edward Augustine in Panama. And down there, he's asking, I've been doing sports events on mobile. What is suggested? And he's streaming directly to the platform or streaming to a studio's RTMP server, and then to have that signal sent out to the platform.
Alex?
When possible, I'll almost always stream to a studio and then relay it from there. And the reason is that I can, if I have that option, because then I can put in emergency slides. So if something goes wrong with the connection, if you go directly from your phone or mobile or any kind of mobile unit to if something goes wrong, you can't do anything about it. There's just breakup and things aren't working. Whereas if you go to a studio, the main thing is it doesn't help you to go to the studio server and then just relay it. But if that studio server it has slides. So for instance, with our elementals and so on and so forth, we can actually put those emergency slides in into the encoder itself and just put up slides and put up loops and put up all kinds of other stuff that's necessary. The other option is to stream RTMP to something like Restream. Will have some of those tools built into it as well as, of course, if you really want to get geeky about it, you can go to AWS. And AWS, you can build a system inside of Media Live that will let you put out stills and videos as well into the RTMP stream that you're sending out to wherever it's going. And so you can have a lot of different options there to make it work. But either going to a studio in the cloud or another studio where you can insert emergency slides, especially when you're going mobile, it becomes more problematic because you have a much higher chance of it not going well. So.
All right, well, that's the end of our first hour, and I'm going to hand it over to Alex as we talk about his studio builds.
All right, so we're continuing the discussion about the studio. I actually spent a lot more time thinking about it than modeling the new things, but I did a couple new models for you to see, for us to discuss. So as we start to talk about it, I know people have been thinking about a bunch of this stuff. So the key is for you to throw those in, things that you thought about last week that you didn't get to, or things that have come up in your head. And so we're going to keep on discussing it, but I want to show you a couple things as it relates to this. So so let me cut over to that. So this is kind of the model as it stands right now. I'm mostly just using boxes to block things out. Now there's a couple things that I did here that are a little a little different. Just to show you what's going on. So one of the things I've been looking at is getting rid of, a lot of comments have come between the weeks of we have too many shelves, too many notes. So one of the things I've been looking at is reducing the number of shelves. Now this represents a door, and this represents a fireplace here and a TV that's already there. When I did the measurements again, I realized that I was off. So one thing I'm going to be doing this week is moving this back a little bit because obviously there's an issue. So this would go right into the into the fireplace. So I when I remeasured it, I was off, and so I'm going to move this back and make it a little bit thinner. Right now it's about 2 feet deep. I'm going to make it probably either 18 or 18 inches, and then I'm going to move it back just a touch, and then that'll give us the space that we need there. Another thing here is that one of the things that we were talking about, but there was a lot of suggestions that Rupert's background looks great. You should think about it. Like I got a lot of those. So I'm thinking about it. So one of the things I'm looking at doing here is putting in kind of one of those lower shelves with some organizational stuff, a la Rupert, and some images. Now these images, I don't know if I have any pictures of it, but I'm probably going to print those on metal. And these might be bigger than I can actually print on metal, but we'll see. I built them for an office where I printed everything on metal, and then they just have little back hooks and they just look like they're floating on the wall. So I'm thinking pretty seriously about that. My only concern is whether they will reflect light and how they reflect light. This is the workbench here that I'm looking at. I don't know if this is the right place to put it. I think that's the only thing that I would say is I don't know if it's right by the door. There's a little. I think that I might, as I was looking at it this morning, I think I might move this workbench, and I'm open to people's input on what they think related to that. But hold on a second here. Just want to make sure that I'm. Anyway, so one of the things I'm looking at here is that I may move this over to this corner, but at this angle, like against this wall, and then move all of this over into that corner. So I may rearrange these just a little bit. Mostly what I'm thinking about is what's going to look nice behind me. So, this will be synthesizers. I am digitizing those this week. So you'll see little models of those next week here. And I'm also kind of trying to figure out whether these need to be, or these should be shelves. I think one of the thoughts I had was here is taking this out and putting a flat, like one of those hanging racks, and have all the patch cables for the synthesizers kind of hanging from there. I'm kind of curious what people think of that. And then to give you kind of a sense of, as you start to think about the desk, this is the challenge that we have with the desk here, which is that this is the speaker, a very, very rough speaker configuration of a 514 system that I'm going to put in. So these will be speakers that go around, and what I'm working on is figuring out how to attach these speakers to the to the whole thing, and then also and then where to put them, and then there becomes this thing where the monitors are probably going to end up having to be above the speakers. The camera becomes above that. So there's a bunch of things that I have. There's a kind of a Tetris that's going to go on with these systems right here that I haven't, totally, figured out just yet as far as how that's all going to, it's going to work. Still looking at probably using SpeedRail up here. After we had David on, I thought a lot about using still the maker pipe connections with the iron plumbing. Then I came back to realizing, as I started taking these shelving out, one of the things I'm going to have to do with this is drop actual speed rail down to the ground to hold this grid up. I'm getting away from where I can actually stack it. Now, one other thought that I had though, actually just now, so when I say I had it like 15 seconds ago while I was talking to you, is that I could build just a square with speed rail and then use maker pipe to build the grid. So the grid could actually be, that will save me a lot of money. So anyway, if I build one that's a square with maybe some major pieces here, and then build a smaller grid in here, It keeps it more standardized and have that just simply attached to this larger piece. So that's another possibility. I have a little concern if I don't build the whole grid, I have some concern of rigidity. So I have to think through that a little bit to make that work. Because I literally just thought of it while I was talking to you. So anyway, so there's a little bit of redesign here where we're going to put possibly some photos in a lower area, move the work desk around, less pieces here, less shelving, and then again this will be all modeled out next week. I'm afraid last week I got a concert that was on Thursday and my week went away, but I have nothing now on my schedule until next year. So anyway, so I will be getting this modeled out over the next week. So you'll see some ideas, but I'm looking to all of you for ideas of what that should look like, because now we're going to spend a little bit more time on it. So we don't have a ton of questions here, but we can go ahead and jump into them. Go ahead.
Okay, the first question here comes from Noah Sargent, and let me move it over into the position because I wasn't sure how we are going to handle it. And he just simply asked, where's the maker pipe going? And I think you just answered that.
Well, yeah, so there is potentially some maker pipe on the top here. All of these shelves will be maker pipe that are here. So this will all be, these are all maker pipe shelving here. I may shorten this one a little bit to stick with 8 feet and then move it out from here so that there's an 8-foot section. And that's mostly, the other option is the other thing I'm looking at is what Chris Fenwick had suggested on the last one, which is kind of an every other, so these don't go all straight across. And so I'm going to look at that as well. So we're, that's part of the design that I'll be kind of playing with over the next little bit of time.
Next question.
Next one coming in from Jack B. in Phoenix, Arizona. He said, how are you thinking about attaching your lights and where will you place them?
Yeah, so the lights are coming next. So there's a couple things that are going on here. Remember, this desk is movable. So this is all going to be on casters that sit down here. The desk itself will have its own lighting system. So the lights that are lighting me will actually be attached to the desk. So this desk is going to be a little bit of a machine. So everything, if I move the desk around, it'll just move everything around with it. So my lighting will never change. And so that'll all be, and typically I'll use, I don't know if I have any that I can grab onto, but typically I'll use Mayfers, to do it. Mayfer is a little clamp that has a pin that I can just attach to it. So those are great. It's also one of the reasons we're not using EMT in any place that I'm going to attach lights. So that's the one thing I got clear of, is that any place I'm going to attach lights horizontally, I'm going to use at least the plumbing piping to attach those so that I can make sure that I can do it without crushing it. But the EMT will be used for a lot of the vertical supports and anything that I don't think I'm going to do that with.
Next question.
Comes from Lois Richter in Davis, California. And Lois says, general suggestions. That's all she notes. So she's just, I guess.
Do you have some general suggestions?
I was hoping that a bunch of people would, but I would say aesthetically to keep that small set of shelves, because it balances things. It sets things. There's a stability in the view that way. And the other thing is, I'm told by people on the panel here that shelves are a great way to not have audio problems. So
yep.
I like the idea of shelves. The other idea is that you might take behind where you have that little desk that you've moved into the bottom right corner, you might put shelves behind that, and that will give you a maker pipe support so that you can have your square of support.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. You mean this little area right over here?
Yes.
Oops. Yeah, so I don't know what I just did there. There we go. Hold on. Behind here, what I think I'm going to end up doing is having this grid. I will put a grid that builds a square around the outer edge, and then I'm going to find either in a corner or somewhere that makes sense to drop down 4 verticals that this whole thing will sit on. So it'll sit independently of the room, that whole grid that goes across the top, and then you'll see where these go long. I'm going to put these little pads that just push into the wall just a little bit. And what that does is it'll sit on those corners, and then it pushes into the wall, and it will get very stiff as far as of how it actually works. It's a good idea though. Yeah, absolutely.
And Courtney?
Well, where to begin? Let's see. One thing, the workbench which you have right next to the door is problematic in that if you put a chair in front of it, you're right in front of the door.
That was part of my thought about swapping it. So swapping it in the other corner.
The other is if it's a workbench, you're going to want some depth on it. You're going to want a shelf to put, test equipment on, to put power supplies on, to put, the soldering stations on. Otherwise, it's going to take up most of your workbench, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So I would put it somewhere else where you have shelves adjacent to it or in front of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The other problem is this constellation, let's just call it, of speakers that you have attached to your moving desk.
Yeah.
That's going to be problematic in that it's great if you're going to be mixing, but if you're using the desk for anything else, the support for all the speakers, especially the overheads that travel around with you, is going to get in the way of your shot for, if you have a camera there.
I don't think it will. We'll see. Like I do hear you there, and I thought about it. So what I know is that if I'm sitting here, I literally have this little window. I've actually kind of been playing with it with this background, that if the camera is roughly at the distance that it is now, at the same focal length, the only thing I'm really worried about is either side of these speakers, and I know that they're not going to be in the frame. So I know that these speakers won't be in the frame, and these upper speakers will definitely not be in the frame.
Well,
so
what are they supported off of if they're attached to the desk?
What you're going to see is a crazy mesh of maker pipe.
The mesh of maker pipe will be out of the shot.
All of it will be out of the shot because it'll be because the maker pipe that is required here these will be on verticals. These ones here will be on verticals, and these will just be suspended above it. So they'll be far above the shot. I mean, remember my shot here. I mean, the window behind me is small given the focal length that I have. So, and I'm only worried about that one shot. If I get any other angles, I want you to see the background. I want you to see the insanity.
And the other problem I would point out is that if your synthesizers are attached to the wall there, you can't operate the synthesizer too well from the desk. So the desk is going to have to move out of the way, and that means all of your sound monitoring equipment is going to be moved out of the way since it's all attached to the desk. So I would go for putting the speakers around the room itself, and then positioning when you want to work in a surround sound, position your desk in the sweet spot to edit or work in surround.
What I've been looking at is, for the most part with the synthesizers, what I've been thinking about anyway is having a stereo on the synthesizers over here that just flush it. Now, the synthesizers themselves, when I'm not playing with them, when I figure out what I want to do with them, they're going to be they're going to get piped via Dante into a mixer, which I then control over here. So when they're running, I'm not going to in surround. If I need them in surround, they're going to be just doing what they're doing.
To operate them, you have to be within arm's length of them. So,
how
do you do that from the desk?
Depends on how they're programmatically handled. It depends on how they're programmed. The problem is that if I'm going to be in lots of different places, the surround I'm doing all the time in lots of different places. If I have to move everything into one location every single time, it'll be problematic. I also, from a room perspective, I have okay speakers, but they're not powerful enough to reach the proper decibel level at any specific point in the room if I put them on the edges. That's the distance. They have to be close, or they won't be. They won't carry far enough.
So they're all near field.
Yeah, I mean they're $150 speakers each. So they're not the $1,000 versions that I can spread out.
JBL studio monitors.
Exactly. So there's a couple limitations there, but I will think to that. I think I love the idea of them all being connected to the desk. So I may stick with that and at least fail with it first before I give up and put them in the room. But putting them in the room, it became clear that I realized very quickly as I started doing the measurements that I would not get anywhere close to them being loud enough to do what they need to do if they're further away. They're really close now. They're too close, but they can be done. Little studios have them like that, and so they're doable, but they're not powerful enough to go to the edges of the room. So that would cost me another $5,000 to get that round, maybe 10. To get the speakers that'd be powerful enough to put there that would reach the proper levels at the focal point. So,
Marty?
Courtney, how did you literally read my mind on every point? No, I'm fascinated with this the concept, Alex, of your desk and how you're going to center yourself in the middle of what I'm imagining to be a cage of maker pipe around you to support all of these speakers and the lights and the camera, and have it all on casters and have it stable enough to be able to actually move it around. I want to see that.
I know. So do I. And no one's ever done it before. It may not work. Like, here's the thing: is it could be a complete failure. Like it, like I'm okay with that.
Now the speakers, have you selected the speakers you're going to use?
Yeah, they're JBL 305s. They're sitting in a stack on the other side of this camera.
So they're actually near field speakers, right? Mm-hmm. Rather than standard speakers that would be located farther. So near field speakers are intended to be positioned close to you.
I think they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he also mentioned the access to the synthesizer shelf from your desk that's going to be interesting.
I'm not that concerned about that. Like, just be clear, I'm not that concerned whether the synthesizers can largely live in stereo, and if I need to pull off things, then I can pump them into the system if I need to, like repeating pieces. And I mean, I'm interested in it, but it doesn't have to all be at arm's. That's not. I guess what I would say is that's not a feasible part of this mission at the moment.
Right.
It's just not. It's not getting surround out of that area where I have the synthesizers would be almost impossible. So.
Yeah, I'm imagining either a second seat that's in front of the synthesizer so that you're comfortable.
Oh, there will be. Well, I'm definitely not moving this desk. There's definitely going to be another chair. Like, it has to be there. A couple, probably, but at least one rolling chair.
So we'll be interested to see whether the speakers in the cage will accomplish what you imagine them to do, or if they eventually end up just getting installed into the room.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely. They won't get installed into the room. They'll have to be used somewhere else because they're not powerful enough for the room. So they're powerful enough to do what I'm doing with them here. So I'm betting big on the ability to do that. So I think that you'll see more of me the way I work. You'll see more of me working it until it works, as opposed to giving up and putting it in the room.
No, we know you're dedicated to the project. Yes,
so you guys will see. I've already bought like most of it. So I'm definitely I'm bid in. So that's a yeah.
All right, Bill? We'll be watching your progress along, right?
So my last couple of weeks since I moved into the new place here has been working on casters because I moved from hardwood to a pretty cushy carpet, which has been great for sound, but terrible for mobility. And I have gone through 4 groups of casters. They keep getting bigger, and Marty is doing the same thing. I started with regular office chair for carpet casters. Then I moved to the slightly bigger ones, and I finally found the monster casters that are big. And even then, I only have about, I'd say 60% or 70% of the mobility I had on my hardwood with my hardwood casters. That's been a challenge for me. So I don't know how much of this you're putting on wheels, but just think about the size of those casters. If I could do bicycle wheels on my chair, I would.
I have a tendency to get pretty large casters. So so the casters will be an expensive part of the model. So I get ball casters, and so that they don't have to turn. That's what makes it really hard to work on carpet. We've gotten them. We've been super successful with them. They'll hold crazy weight. They're expensive though. And so I'm probably not going to get really thick carpet. I'm going to get carpet, but it'll be pretty thin on there so that they roll over it well. They won't. The ball caster specifically will not handle large, like heavy carpet. It'll get all caught up in it. It'll be a big mess. So it's more of the tight carpet, something that'll do some absorption, but it's not going to be like fur.
And Jason?
Oh wow, you got me on casters. So I'm going to try to pick up this very heavy thing, and these are basically rollerblade wheels. It's STEALTHO. I love these guys. It's not for the desk. I too use extremely heavy ball casters anytime I'm going to move my desk, and mine has been on casters basically as long as I've been in the studio. The new studio is going to be even more so along those lines. But my thought about the surround sound, if you're going to go big, get one of those rings, or get one of the pipes and get it bent into a ring. If you're going to go all the way for those overheads going down, bend it into a ring. That would just look incredibly cool.
Wait, say that again?
So you're going to be mounting the overhead pipes, right? Or the overhead speakers, right? Pointing down.
Put them on a ring.
Put those on a ring instead of having to mess with a mount, because it's going to look supremely cool. It is as easy as, the pipe benders, machine shops will do it for nearly no money. And it's, the 305s are not extremely heavy speakers. So my immediate thought is, if you're going to go big and you're already locked in with those speakers, just get a tight little ring and then you can mount it wherever you want.
You mean like two concentric circles that it just
two
sits
concentric circles that are used to mount those overhead speakers.
That
Plus,
might
it
work.
would look amazing. To say nothing of the lighting that you could do with that.
Yeah. Okay. Let me think of that. That'll go into the model. Next.
Next question comes from Steven Montagna in Madison, Wisconsin, and he says, are you concerned about the desk being in the corner? Have you thought about moving it out a bit to provide more room to get around it?
The desk won't be in the corner. It'll be wherever it is. so we'll move the, if you're talking about the work desk, I don't think that the work desk is sitting right next to me right now. It doesn't really have anything available behind it. So once it gets there, it'll be what it is. And it's, I don't have an easy way to show it to you right now, but it's called a Seville Classics Ultra HD that I got from Amazon. Put it together in an hour. So anyway, it's got so that's like my little work desk that I'm putting in there, but I don't need to get to the other side of it, at least right now. Next question. Yeah.
Noah Sargent, Fullerton, California. What's the distance from the front left corner of the desk to the small shelf in front of it?
Distance from the lower. I'm trying to figure out what that means.
Noah,
did you want to?
Are you
Sure, yeah. So if you're seated at the desk,
yeah,
in front of you to the left, so the corner,
over here,
opposite corner.
This one here.
Yes, that one to the small shelf.
Well, this is on rollers, so it'll be however, however.
Okay,
I move
so
it
it'll
around
move.
To.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
this whole thing. Yeah, this will move. This will be clearer next week. But the idea is this won't move very much. It just rotates in a lot of ways. But the main thing is that it, what it allows for is for me to have different backgrounds. So I could have kind of the fireplace look with the shelving, or I can have the synthesizers or the workbench with the thing over here. So there's a couple different looks that I can do. And then from the grid, I'll also be able to drop this gray screen down behind it. So there's a couple different ways that I can show the space depending on what I want to do. That's the goal, is that I'm not kind of stuck with a space. It also means that I can work on one space to make it look a certain way while I'm doing show after show after show. I can work on one for a week and then flip it and have something else that's there. So it gives me a lot of flexibility.
Next question.
Next question comes from Douglas Carmichael, and Douglas says, you mentioned using 80/20 for the overhead frame. With the increased durability of 80/20, why not drop the maker pipe completely?
Price. Price is the big thing. The maker pipe is 1/10 the cost of the 80/20. I'm not 80/20. Number one is I didn't say I'd use 80/20. I said I'd use speed rail. I'm probably not going to use, I use a lot of 80/20, and I use a lot of 80/20. I love 80/20, and but that's even more expensive. So to put all the rigs in and everything else, you start adding up a lot of money. So the speed rail is the next down from the 80/20, and the maker pipe lets me really just experiment. So all the things we're experimenting with, I may decide that we have to build my desk in 80/20 or in speed rail. We're going to figure that out. But I'd rather start with maker pipe, fail, and then stack down than to start with the thing that's the most expensive.
Next question.
Andrew Moyer, Oakville, Ontario, Canada, says, are the speakers going to move with the desk, or are the overheads a part of the grid?
Well, the theory is that everything's going to move with the desk, and we'll see how that turns out. I'm pretty good at understanding weight. So this rig isn't nearly as heavy as it looks. The speakers themselves are not that heavy. The rig isn't that heavy. It may be a problem. And if it is, we're all going to learn about it together. so if it, we'll just go, well, that didn't work. Because we're doing it with MakerPipe, the pipe itself is very inexpensive. The parts can be used somewhere else. I have a lot of flexibility in being able to, to make that work.
Next question.
Oh, no, I think you got a couple.
Nope. Yeah. Sorry, Bill.
That's okay. I just, when you were talking about this, it reminded me, there used to be a fabulous venue in Phoenix back in my youth called the Celebrity Theater. And it was an intimate theater in the round, and they had a motorized circular stage center. I got to see Jethro Tull there. I got to see Marvin Gaye there. And it was fabulous because everything just rotated. And I wondered if did you consider doing it?
I have thought about it. It's really expensive. So what Bill's talking about, you can get these, someone's got a lot of noise in the system right now. I don't know why. One thing you can do is you can rotate for large items in cars. You can have a rotating system where the background, where you can rotate. If you ever go to a car show, you see the cars rotating. There's two problems with it. That is very heavy, and I don't know if my house is built for that. So if we decide that this works, this crazy idea that I have, the next one, to your point, Bill, I have thought of that, and I will absolutely do it. If the idea that I can change my set works, in fact, not only will I do it, I'll have it change 1 degree a minute throughout the entire show.
You're gonna float the Alex.
It'll just you won't see it moving. Like when it cuts to me, you won't see it moving, but every time it cuts back to me, there'll be a different background. And then,
incredible. I saw David.
Oh my gosh, it'll be great.
In the Star Theater or in the Celebrity Theater. It just changes a little, and through the course of the whole show, it changes. It's fabulous.
Well, one of the things we did, one of the things that's interesting about that is we pitched this because we started doing these in the rounds. When Virgin, their entrepreneur program with Richard Branson, they wanted to do everything in the round. I've talked about it in the past, and we were like, "That's a horrible idea. Don't ever do that." And we finally capitulated to them, and it turned out to be the best idea ever. And so, for live audiences, building in the round is the only way to go, in my opinion, because you can put 250 people within 25 feet of the actors. Or the speakers. You don't even need to mic them. That you can hear everything that they're saying. And so it's a really intimate way to do it. You put people on risers and you can go up. But what we realize is that some people then have to watch the backs the whole time. If you watch the back of Guy Kawasaki or Richard Branson or whatever, it's kind of a bummer. So we did propose to a couple of groups, and we just never got them to bite down because it's like, $8,000 for the turntable. But it just would slowly, the idea is that we just program it, that it just slowly moves, so imperceptibly moves. It's not like a roller coaster. But within the hour, it's turned all the way, all the way or enough that you've seen enough of it.
Well, it's like the Space Needle, right? I mean, you're going to float the Alex, ostensibly.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a halftime show for Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly.
Lois?
So I was wondering about, you're having this desk that's going to move, and you've got all these lights and speakers and your computer and all that stuff. Where do all the cables go? Are they on the floor? Are you having to pick them up and have someone to carry your train or something?
Right now, the way it's built, there'll be two cables. One is power and the other is Ethernet. So all the audio and everything else is going in and out over Ethernet. The lighting is all self-contained. The computers it's all Mac Minis, so it's not big computers and monitors, and so everything's self-contained on the desk except for the Ethernet and the power, and so those will hang from the grid. And then I'm working on how we swivel those so that I just have a way to relatively easily move them around to where they need to go. So it shouldn't there won't be a lot of cables. I don't like cables on the floor. I'm against it.
Courtney?
Yeah, and the question is about the monitor above the fireplace. Is that just going to be used for background, or are you going to use that as an active monitor that you look at every now and then?
It'll be just background. I won't try to use
a faux window.
And how are you going to get a signal to that?
Apple TV.
So that's going to be a Wi-Fi signal.
Yeah, just or Ethernet. There's an Ethernet. There's literally an Ethernet box right next to it. So like down at the bottom of it, that's the Ethernet box goes back to the server room. So where my connection to my server room goes is right there. And eventually some of this will go back to the server room, but I'm not worried about it right now.
And the other question is the cage that supports all the speakers and monitors, et cetera, on the desk. Is that attached to the desk legs, or is it on a platform that the whole desk and...
my plan is to attach it to the, it'll attach to the outer legs that go down. Yeah.
Okay, that's going to put a lot of stress on them because of the leverage of the weight up high.
Yep.
So make sure those legs are attached very firmly to that desk surface.
Yes.
Next question.
Next one comes from Robert Soji in Los Angeles, and Robert says, where can we see a complete list of the audio components for your 5.1 audio system?
When I get it wired out. So the first step of me is figuring out this layout. Over this week and next week, before Christmas, I'm hoping to have the wiring diagram done, so you'll get to see what that looks like. It's going to be a very basic one. I am going to use a RMU to do the calculations for the 514, but that's just a Mac Mini that has to do that. And then the interface to and from the speakers will be my X32. So, and that will, the speakers themselves are XLR in, not wired in. And so they have their own power, and so they're self-powered speakers as opposed to amp powered speakers, which gives me a lot more flexibility when it comes to flowing them out.
Next question.
Noah Sargent in Fullerton, California says, what were the dimensions of the room?
It's 15 by 20. And then height is, we're making the grid at 9 feet, because I don't think I need any more than that. And I think that more than that just means I got to hang things down lower. The room itself keeps going. so anyway, so the room itself is as a higher, there's not any issue with more distance above me, but other than echo. So I don't, it's kind of a big thing up there.
I expect one grand picture from the highest point looking down.
Yeah, we should have one way up there, because I can get it way up there above the grid. So we could have like this weird grid shot. That's a great idea. We'll definitely do that.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Next question.
Next one comes from Noah Sargent in Fullerton, California, and he says, will the desk be pre-made or custom built?
We're looking at butcher blocks. So Chris Fenwick found some really, really good kind of thick wood. So for the desk itself and for the two side parts of the desk, those will most likely be kind of a butcher block kind of topping, which turns out to not be nearly as expensive as I thought. And they'll look cool, and they'll be thick. And the only downside of them is they'll be heavy. So, as we deal with weight distribution, they become more challenging in that area. Oh, we lost Liberty. Let's see here. Oh, are you there, Liberty? Can we? Got a little connection issue there. Go ahead, Bill. Let's go ahead and jump to the
let's
next
go ahead
question.
and wander through. David Schittler, looks like in South Carolina, says, what size OD pipe are you planning on using for speed rail? I'm thinking about how to attach EMT conduit to that pipe.
It's so cool that Dave is watching. Anyway, I am right now. I'm looking at 1.5. So that's the 1.5 is what I'm looking at. I don't think I need any more than that. In the past I've used as big as 10, or not 10. Sorry, 2 or 1.75. But I think 1.5 is the outer diameter that I'm looking at there.
Our friend Charles Klein in New York City has the next question. He says, hey, Alex, what will your Atmos pipeline be? What are you planning on using to connect it to all 10 monitors?
So I'm going to use my plan right now is to go ahead and use the X32, and then I'm going to build a Dante connection to an RMU so that I can push stuff out and it'll calculate everything in Atmos and then push it out as speakers. So, and I will, we'll talk a lot more about that as I get it set up. So, but that's a real-time processing engine. So, anyway, we'll look at that as we get a little closer.
Okay, Jason Bache has the next question from Albuquerque, and here on the panel he says, please explain to me the rationale of your downward firing speakers being closer to your rear surround sound speakers. When I draw vectors from those speakers, the angle looks wrong to me. How are you attaching the overhead speakers?
We basically covered that. I don't think you have any more to say, do you?
The only thing I'll say is that I did that really quickly. Like I was like, there'll be speakers here and here and here and here. I haven't done the math for it yet. So the math of exactly where the speakers should go is very specific to your point of where those 514 speakers need to be. And I didn't try to do the math in this drawing. So, but the math, I promise, will be correct, in that area. The other thing is that what's most important is to get them roughly into the right place. And then you have to you have to attenuate each speaker to know what's going on there.
JJ McKenna gets question of the day with this one. Would it be possible to reframe the door and location once you've turned this into a panic room?
So I have thought about one of the reasons there's no door there right now is because my dream is to put a secret door. Because in my rest of my house, if you saw it, you would never think that my office was here. Like if you saw a bookshelf there, you would never. I've ruined it now because I put it on YouTube. So, but you would never see that. It's never going to be a good panic room now. Anyway, so now I have to move out of the house because I used it up on YouTube.
Which book will trigger the secret?
Exactly. Anyway, so I've always thought that'd be a lot of fun. I've given up obviously because I've talked about it on the show, but it's a horrible panic room because there's lots of windows. Like this is, if you're going to pick a room in the house, this won't be it. So I'm not too worried about turning that into.
You're worried about speaker weight. Sheet steel is very, very.
Yeah, exactly. I think Roscoe had a comment there.
In California, you do not want to be your panic room to have things on high shelves. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I guess we're moving on to Jason Panks in Nashville, Tennessee. He says, "Do you have weight limits on the shelves or grid?"
I don't know what they are yet. So those are all things that we're gonna figure out. I actually have a pretty, given the way that the weight distribution is going to work, I don't think that there's anything that in my mind that I'm going to put on any of these shelves that's going to create a weight problem with the distribution. I feel like the maker pipe, for the most part, in places that I think that it'll be problematic, almost all the stress will be downward, and it'll almost all be on any stress on long pieces will be a downward vector. And we've already talked last week with David about the fact that can handle a lot of weight, to going down. So I think that a lot of this is less of a, does the materials handle it, and more does the engineering handle it. Again, it really comes down to load points and vectors than more so than what the materials themselves actually manage.
And it looks like Liberty made it back. Are you mic'd up and ready to go, Liberty? Whoops. No,
still not quite there. All right, we can't hear you.
I'll do the next question, and hopefully she gets back here real quick. JJ McKenna is back in from Santa Venetia, California, and he says, taking Jason's suggestion one step further, what about mounting all the speakers from the ceiling and just the desk on a Lazy Susan?
Well, you can't. You need the speakers have to stay in the same relationship to the pilot.
Fixing one without fixing the other
you
is
gotta,
pointless.
Yeah, so that's the problem is that for those the way the system works, I can't really move. If I put them in the room, I can't really move them around. I'd always have to come back to the same space to do anything. So by doing this, I can move them around and keep working if it works. And I don't know if it'll work, and we're gonna find out.
It's going to be really cool one way or another.
It'll be a wonderful disaster if it doesn't work. Like we just all have to look at it. It'll be, what I'm planning to do is in a couple of weeks, we'll build the desk. The desk is probably the first thing. Well, we'll build some shelves soon. But I'll do it in my garage, and we'll stream it, and we'll all talk about it while we screw it up. It'll be a couple days of cutting metal and putting them together. And I will keep the audio off at times when I'm not happy with what's happening.
We've learned nothing else from office hours. It's failing to learn is an excellent.
We talk a lot about failing forward. I may fail forward a lot on this studio. Liberty, did you want to unmute and see if you're back? Nope, still not back. There you go. So we'll go on to the next question. Hopefully get her in later. Douglas Carmichael is up next. He says, have you ever thought about using Dante or Wave Sound Grid to run all the audio into a network and then tie the console in it with a single Ethernet cable? That's the plan. That is my plan. Dante. It's my plan. Yep. Absolutely. Joe at Alpha Creative in Gainesville, Florida says, have you ever considered installing a marble orbit in lieu of the spinning table? I've not heard of a marble orbit. Yeah. We're all like wondering. So yeah, the problem really is, so that's a great idea. So Spud Murphy, who we used to work with in Zimbabwe, built one that's like this, that was massive. I think the radius was like 20 feet or something like that. And it's a really, really cool, system to work with. It won't work for me because of all the lights and the monitors and everything else that I have to do. We've wanted to do something like that for the circular events that we've done in the past for years, and this looks really cool. So I'll take a look at it more. But yeah, so it's a good idea though.
Fair enough. And Liberty, do you want to just wave when you think you might want to sleep back in? Did you change something or?
No, I think we're just going to keep going. We're near the end.
Fair enough. Douglas Carmichael's up next. Douglas says, are you going to make the studio partially or fully Belfastable? Oh, great verb. Or even mobified? I like that one.
Douglas for the win.
It's mobified.
Mobified. That's great. I love that. There's going to be a mobified. Mobified. It's and the Belfastable. Yes. Yeah. We're definitely going to, I don't know if everything will be that way from day one, but the goal is to build it out over time. It'll be built so that anybody could run the studio from anywhere. So both Belfasted mobily process.
I want to be the first person to ever use the word mobification because that's just really cool.
Yeah, the mobification of the studio. Yeah, exactly.
Belfastification. I like it.
Yeah.
Moving on to Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana. Chris says, it may seem far-fetched, but I wonder if there would be a way to use a bumper car trolley setup for electricity where a DC pole could let you freely move the desk around.
Oh, that is the world's greatest fire hazard.
So it would need to be a DC to AC conversion, but not insurmountable.
I did think of Tesla. Like a Tesla, not like the car. It's just just sparks.
Big Tesla coil.
No, you just see sparks going out and all the power coming in. That would be.
You just have a big arc going right in the chest. Like, how you doing?
But a bumper car trolley system would be fun. It would be fun to do. I think that I would be afraid of open power, but with so much stuff. And I think that the problem really, to get back to yours technically, is I think that it'll create noise in the speakers. Like, that type of interface will be hard to keep it like electrically quiet.
And don't use an aluminum ladder to adjust your lights.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I think that you probably, to get the throw out of a Tesla, you'd probably need at least 1 million volts.
Easily a million volts, but
maybe 2
million. If there was a bug ever in the frame, you'd see like zzz, and then it was just gone.
It'd be awesome. My hair would always be standing like slightly up. That'd be great. All right, next question.
Keith Buccini, it looks like, although I might be pronouncing that wrong. Sorry, Keith. How about making a separate cage on wheels for the speakers?
I've thought about that. The problem really is that if you put it on a separate speaker, it becomes a real disaster to move around. So I felt like, as I thought through it, I felt like it all has to be kind of one piece that you just roll. And it is, what everybody said is absolutely accurate, that it's going to be really complicated to build this in a way that works. So I know that what I'm doing is hard. And it's part of why I'm doing it.
Andrew Moyer in Oakville, Ontario, Canada. Canada says, any concern about vibrations in the camera if it is attached to the desk? What plan do you have for this?
So I'm planning to have the cameras. This is the one place where it is a little separate. Right now, my thought, and I don't know if this will work or not, is to put the cameras on wheels, the tripod on wheels, and put them in little, each leg in a little circle. When I move the whole thing, it'll just kind of get pulled along. And then all I have to do is walk over there and just kind of move it a little bit, move the tripod so it's no longer touching those little circles. That way it sits on its own and it's not actually connected to the desk. And the reason I'm doing that is specifically because of what you were saying.
Okay, Keith.
Noah had a comment there.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm not seeing any of those.
No worries. Yeah, I'm curious if you could use like a mic stand with a heavy base and basically convert the top from 5/8 to quarter and put a ball head on top of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I've done that before. It's not as stable as it sounds.
Yeah, it could work though. I mean, if I'm not bouncing around a lot, what we've done with teleprompters in the past and with some PTZs, to your point, is to have is to use just a C-stand, and then we weld the C-stand to a 1/2-inch plate and then set it down. It's super heavy and it doesn't go anywhere. And I don't expect to in most broadcasts be walking around, so it's not a problem, but it can be. And then the other thing I have to think about is, to your point there, also cameras in different places. So there'll be some cameras that aren't on the rig. There'll be that high and wide camera that you were talking about, and then there'll be like probably one over the work desk and one over the synths, and there's a couple other shots that have to get
Just hang it all from the grid.
Yeah, exactly. I probably will. I mean, I try to once you build a grid, you kind of tend to put everything in it. It's kind of the thing.
Douglas Carmichael's next with, you mentioned.
I think that Marty had another comment. You got to be using the panelist view if you're not, Bill, because you can't see anything. Yeah, you're running blind. Marty?
So what about using like a handheld stabilizer for your camera?
The problem is the handheld stabilizers actually don't handle well, number one is I'm putting in a teleprompter. so it'd be a big stabilizer to make that work. And also really fine vibration is something that some of the stabilizers don't handle as well. You still get, because they're not handling the up and down very well. They'll handle rotation. But there
is a 3-axis stabilizer gimbal that I can show you. And if you mounted the teleprompter glass separately from the camera, if you stabilize the camera behind it, that might work. But I can show you this 3-camera.
Yeah, I mean, I do really want to put like I have an older Ronin head that I could put in there as well that would let me that would stabilize it a little bit, but also give me control over it. All right, go ahead, Bill.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know if I clicked to that. I just said I've got a heart out. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We're gonna be done. Yeah. Did you have a next question?
Yeah. Let's just go to the next question. Courtney Gooden in Hollywood says, Alex, you might consider having a monitor and a keyboard on a floating arm.
I think you skipped Douglas's.
Oh. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. It's been a weird day. Let's go back to answered. And Douglas Carmichael says, you mentioned an X32 as the console. Have you thought about a Wing or even an Allen and Heath SQ or D Live? The D Live would be a mix engine without faders.
Yeah, I own an X32. so that's why I'm using one. I have an X32 here, so I'm probably going to use the one that I have. Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
I just went through all of which digital consoles should I get over and over and over and back and forth. There is no, and again, like I too am doing Dante with all of those 10 outs. There is no appreciable reason why the X32 shouldn't work. There are lots of things the other ones you're talking about do, but there are no reasons that I can think of for the kind of mixing that's happening here that you shouldn't use the simplest possible solution. And there are thousands of reasons in the form of thousands of dollars as to why not use anything that you listed.
Yeah, I think that one of the issues is that for me, one of the issues with the problem with the X32 is it doesn't really do true surround of any kind. There's not really any placement. You're just panning stuff in and out of it. So I have to use a software engine to drive the output. I mean, that's what I have to do with the X32 to drive it right now. Is I'll use a software engine to push it out. So it's just being used as I/O in that sense. It's a big I/O system. I'd love to get into a bigger mixer that would let me do it in the mixer down the road, but since most of what I'm going to be doing is software, mostly like Logic or something like that, for surround, I think I'll be okay. There's a tricky part to it that I want to be able to have my surround thing and then be able to move the things that are right in front of me out of the way so that I can watch a movie with the surround. But that will be very hard. So I'm close to giving up on that part. Next question.
Bill doesn't seem to be here. Alex, do you want to ask it?
Sure, absolutely. Next question is from Courtney Gooden. He says, Alex, you might consider having a monitor and keyboard on a floating arm in the synth nook connected to Ethernet KVM to your main computer in the desk so that you can control recording, streaming, etc. from the synth area. I think it's a great idea. Yeah, that would totally make sense to be able to kind of sit in that space and then be able to interact with everyone out there. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Next question is from Lois Richter in Davis, California. And she said, maybe put a geodesic dome around your desk.
For extra added awesome.
Yeah, that would be so extra added awesome. I'm a big Buckminster Fuller fan. So, Okay, I don't know how that would fit in the room or whether it would be a funny little dome, but oh, that would be so cool.
Maybe
Anyway,
on
so
top of the speed grid just for fun.
yeah, that's such a good idea. Like I got to think. I'm such a big fan of his work, so it would be and if I mixed the geodesic dome with the Tesla, then I'd mix the two people that I pay the most attention to in science. Anyway, all right. Next question is from Chris Widner in Lafayette, Indiana. He said the room is just big enough. A cable cam with an iPhone could be an interesting behind the scenes shot. A little cable cam, the cable cam of pulling it over. That'd be fun.
What if the cable cam ran all the way up to the top? That would be really interesting.
Oh yeah, there's got to be. I should, before I get this all in, where I can still get access, I should put some cameras that look down on it or something like that. There's some fun access.
Well, a
points
Mavic
there.
and a drone shot would be an easy way to at least show the perspective.
Yeah.
You also have to mount a time-lapse camera up in the corner of GoPro to cover all of the building and rearranging for you.
Yeah, exactly. Rodrigo Munoz, said, why would you need surround in production? Because it is the future. so it is like it is, as someone who listens to a lot of surround at this point, I mean, I have spent a lot of time listening to surround. I have a strong distaste for stereo. Like, you just in case you're wondering, like, to me, if you're going to do stereo, you might as well do mono. Like I just don't think it's that particularly compelling. And so I just find it to be very muddy. And so I feel like if you're going to give up, you might as well just give up all the way and just do a mono track. So anyway, that's how I approach it. So 5.1 is the minimum that I'm looking at, and we're looking at having office hours in 5.1 soon. We're working to get that okayed, and we've talked about that a little bit before, and then eventually it'd be great to do even more than that. And so I find that I like things that I'm trying to figure out. I try to do all the time. Like if you look at Office Hours 2.0, we're doing the same thing over and over again. We're failing in small ways. It's not public yet. We're doing a bunch of stuff like, oh, this works, this doesn't work, this works, this doesn't work. By having 5.1.4 around me all the time, I tend to use it more. I'll just use it. I'll listen to it more. And what that allows you to do is tune your ears. You tune your ears. You play with it. You get to noodle with it. There's not going to be a lot because it's now incorporated into all the Apple devices. There's going to be almost no albums released except for like retro bands within a year that don't use Atmos. I mean, I can tell you this from behind the scenes. It's like nobody's going to make an album that's stereo after that. And so, they'll fold it down to stereo. But if you have a 5.1.4 or 5.1 system, you're going to hear a lot more, just because everything's getting built that way now. There's not any. I mean, other than people who want to do it like the original Beatles for some weird reason, that no one's going to not do it that way. So, and almost every film now is mastered in Atmos. So us figuring out as a group how to take full advantage of that, someday maybe even Zoom will handle surround. So, and so all of those things are things that we want to, the way to get good at these things, the number one thing that I found in my life is that luck is when opportunity meets preparation. And so I have a tendency to prep a lot. I'm a prepper. but mostly just a technology prepper. I don't have any MREs anywhere. But or dried seeds. But I do have I do prep all the time. I'm constantly I see a technology that I think is going to go forward, and I'll spend years just noodling with it in very small increments because it lets my mind absorb what's happening in a slower space. JJ McKenna asks, is there space above the drone controlled? There's a space above for a drone controlled by Ray Maxwell for your overhead shots. I think you could. I think I'd worry about it falling into the lights. And the final question from Rodrigo Munoz is this studio we are talking about an upgrade from the studio you are working in today? I have wondered how you are going to be able to get any work done with so many office hours episodes going out constantly. There will be a painful moment when all of the stuff has to get put in. And I am thinking through kind of like what that there'll be a week or two of it being in this kind of state of disarray as I put it together. But I've loaded in for a living for a decade, so it's not going to be as long as it will take. Most likely build it in my garage and get it all kind of largely working, and then just disassemble it in pieces and bring it in here and set it all up. And I'll probably get a couple of people to help. And my son is now an operational age. He's 14 years old.
Garage. That's what I want to know.
Oh, it's bigger than my room. so anyway, it's a pretty big garage. So anyway, I can build it out there. Right now it's just messy. So I'm unmessing it over the next couple of weeks to spread the space out. Anyway, I think that's it. Thank you so much to the producers for all the great questions and ideas and concepts. I think it's fun for us to just think through this, and I'll have more models for you to look at later. And I do, as a reminder, in the studio design area, there is a older USDZ model. I'll put up a new one by the end of the week for you to look at before next Monday, so that you can look at it. The USDZ, if you have a phone, you can literally download it and pop it up and look at it as if you were standing in the middle of the studio. So it's full sized in USDZ. Now you can, if you scrunch with your fingers, it'll go down and you can set it on a desk and move around. But if you want to look at what it would be like inside as we build these things, you can do that with the USDZ. I'm also posting the Cinema 4D files, as well as the OBJ files. So if you want to play with what I'm doing, you can do that as well. So those are all options. And so if you feel like playing with those ideas, and again, I think it's an adventure that we're all kind of going down the path of. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the adventure as we right now we're just thinking about it, and then we'll slowly put it together and see if any of it actually works. I am gonna, as we get a little closer to figuring out exactly what we want, I'm probably gonna bring in some ringers to the show to talk a little bit about structure and mechanics. So I've got a couple friends that do a lot of this kind of thing. So anyway, that's it. Thanks to the producers who gave us the great questions and ideas. Thanks to the panelists who, once again, every day come back and contribute your knowledge back to the group. Thanks to Lois. Good job cutting the show, Lois. Well done. Thanks to Bill, who's asking the questions, and to Liberty, who was hosting the show. I'm really excited to have Liberty do that. I know she had a couple of technical issues today. We all have. We've all been there. So we'll work on that and see if we can't iron out some of those before next week. All right. See everybody in after hours.